Hey guys, welcome back to a brand new video. Right before the playoffs today, right before the playoffs, we're going over our brackets to see what predictions we have made and to show you guys, to show you guys what predictions we have made. So, you guys want to say anything really quickly? And just get rid of it,
No, it's best time of year. I mean, the playoffs are starting. It's awesome. I'm so excited to talk about it. This playoffs are really more so than any other year I've seen in recent memory. Like it could literally go so many ways. Obviously the consensus is the Bruins or the Oilers or whatever, but even that we've seen year after year. The playoffs are a crapshoot. I mean, once you get to the playoffs, literally all 16 teams are eligible. Maybe a couple of them you take out of there, but like in general, there are so many teams I can imagine winning the Stanley Cup, and that's what's going to make this year's Stanley Cup playoffs that much better.
yeah, for sure. All right. We can just go right into it. Um, do any of you guys want to go first? I don't want to go first.
Um, one of you two started off because you guys
All
will
right.
set up what bracket, like what pick we're doing, and then I could say my pick first because I have that all set. Just like one of you guys set up. Okay, now we're gonna talk about this, and
All
then
right. Okay, so I'll go first round. I'll go East for like 1 versus 8, if you want to say. It's more like 1 versus wild card. So you got Boston versus Florida. I feel like Florida can definitely take a game. That's why I have Boston in 5. There's like nothing really much else to it. Boston is just an amazing team. Florida's worse in every single one. I think offense, defense, and goaltending they're worse, and there's no match for Boston. I do have them taking a game, but I think Boston 5. I feel like it's pretty safe.
yeah, I'm going Boston in 5 as well. I think Florida, they're one, I guess, specialty, but even if it's not even a specialty, because they're not deep offensively, they have a good top 6, and that's about it. But I think their scoring ability will make them be able to take a game. But as you said, Boston has more depth up front. They have way more offensive depth, way more defensive depth, and in net, it's a comparison between Linus Ullmark and probably Alex Lyon for Florida. Like it just isn't a competition. I am not someone who thinks Boston's going to be undefeatable in this year's playoffs. I actually am going to predict them to get upset at a certain point, but I think no question that they got to get there before.
hmm
Yeah.
I'll go Boston in 5 as well. I'm gonna continue with the pattern. Florida's got good forward depth. I really like what I saw from Kachuk this year, but that's a bright spot that they had. Lions been a good stretch there, but not much to talk about this. I mean, I really can't see a world except maybe we see a Columbus Tampa situation. That'd be pretty funny, but I don't think it'll happen this year. Boston in 5 for me as well.
Yeah. All right. Moving on to I know both of you guys. I'm just gonna go with my gut and what I think will happen. I took Tampa in 7. I know everyone is high on the Leafs this year.
Max,
Everyone is high on the Leafs this year.
Max.
I just don't. I don't see it happening. I don't see the Leafs making it past. I
Make the
feel like
division.
Tampa. Okay, hear me out. Tampa is in
More passion there,
every
Joel.
way besides goaltending worse than Toronto. Don't get me wrong. Toronto's better forward depth, better defense. Not better like top defense, but defense depth for sure. But like I just don't see. I just don't see a world where Toronto's like has the advantage, and I think they're gonna get ahead of themselves. Think they're gonna get there in like 5 games, and then they're just gonna do what they did with Montreal. They're gonna think they're the better team out of everyone, which obviously they are. They're gonna think they can take advantage of that, which they definitely cannot against a goaltender like against Vasilevsky. And I just don't see them. I just don't see them making it past the first round. I have Tampa in 7.
Yep.
I don't know. Like the only argument for Tampa over Toronto is just Tampa historically is a good playoff team. Toronto historically isn't. But by all metrics, taking away like the history of the Leafs and the history of the Lightning, it's night and day. The Leafs are like mile like last year I picked the Lightning to beat the Leafs because I genuinely believed the Lightning were a better team than the Leafs. The Lightning had a lot of depth last year that they now are missing. They don't have Palat anymore. They don't have McDonough. They lost a lot of defensive depth, also a lot of offensive depth. They're not as good of a team as they used to be. The only place where, as you said, where they get the advantage over Toronto is the fact that they have Vasilevsky. But with the fact that the Leafs are significantly better defensively and deeper defensively than the Lightning, I still think the Leafs defense will be able to prop Samsonov up and allow him to play just as good as Vasilevsky is. I mean, if you look at a comparison of their numbers this season, I know they played less games, like Samsonov played less games, but Samsonov had better numbers than Vasilevsky this year. He's not a better goalie, but with the amazing defense and the amazing team in front of him, he was playing better than one of the greatest goalies in the entire league. And that's because the Leafs are a fantastic team in front of them. I don't even think it goes to 7. I think the Leafs win in 6. I think they're that much better. And yeah, the Leafs historically are a team where they'll get a big lead and they'll collapse. That's in their DNA right now. It's stressful. It's frustrating. I hate it. But they have so much depth now, but not just any depth. They got depth that has done it before. They got Ryan O'Reilly that not only won a Stanley Cup, he was the freaking MVP of winning their Stanley Cup. These are guys that know how to win. Noel Acciari went to a Stanley Cup final with Boston. Like, these are guys that know how to win in the playoffs. And even if the Leafs top guys are a little bit out of it, oh yeah, we're going to beat these guys, we're up 3-1 in the series, whatever. Those guys, Ryan O'Reilly is a leader that'll step up in this room and say, cut that out. We know we're playing a fantastic Tampa Bay Lightning team. We'll need to work and bring it every single night. So that'll immediately get into their head. The leadership group has changed, and we have every advantage on them. If our top guys produce like they're capable of producing, if Matthews, Marner, Nylander, Tavares produce the way that they're capable of producing, we could win a series. We could, I'll go as far as to say, if those guys produce and our depth produces, we could win a Stanley Cup.
And I'm gonna have to agree with you. You said you had Toronto in 6, Adrian.
Yep.
And like Max, I've been trying to convince myself these past few months, give up on Toronto. Like, stop. Every year you take Toronto and they lose. I don't know if it's just something weird, but I don't know. This year, there's something special with this strong team. Like Jared said, they have pieces that throughout their lineup, they have the depth to get past Tampa. And like Jared said, like a lot of these years, the reason we lose is because we are playing against a team that has really good goaltending. Montreal, Tampa, Columbus, they wasn't really strong, but you played Chico Rask. These are teams that. And Tampa is a team like that, but Samsonov has played amazing this year, and if we can get Samsonov to play better than Campbell was, and Campbell was great last year, give all respect to Suzuki last year. He was great. He kept us in that series for a lot of the games. But I think our number one, I think where the series could go away is Vasilevsky. But last year we saw we could we beat Vasilevsky quite a few times. We had some games where we put up a lot of goals on Vasi, and also we've gone better since then. I mean, look at the game against Tampa, even as proof for my point. The guys like Matthews and Marner who scored against Vasi last year weren't even playing. Sorry, something wrong with my computer. Weren't even playing, and now they had guys who stepped up. If they could continue to have that like we had in that game against Tampa, I think this series could go 5 or 6. I love from Tampa how this is just I love how Tampa said, or Nick Paul said before the game, this is a game that's huge for us, brings a lot of intensity to the series upcoming. This is a huge game, and later on, after the game ends, Cooper's like, okay, this game didn't matter at all. I think this Tampa team might know that, okay, that we beat them last year. They get ahead of ourselves. Like Max said, they can blow it up. They can just choke, right? But I think you've got guys this year that you haven't had in past that not decide, like Jared said, calm down. And if you have a
proven
serious
winners.
lead,
they know what to tell a group in these like do or die situations.
Exactly. I love the team that was built in front of. I love the team that was created. I think they beat Tampa. They got a lot of they got a lot ahead of them, but this is a cup contending team. If you ignore, like Jared said, if you ignore all the history these last few years and that didn't matter whatsoever, you just looked at the skill of these teams, Toronto easily has the opportunity to go on a run. It's just, can they overcome that first round demon that's been facing them these last 2 decades? I think they can. Give me Toronto in 6. Bucket.
Like as much as it
I
pains
like
me,
that.
to do that, I can't see like. Okay, I won't say anything else. I said a lot already. But
I guess you're not a believer.
moving on to the
I can't
Metro,
blame
we
you.
have Carolina versus Isles. Isles is a bit of a more
Jared, I might have to kick
controversial.
Max out of my
Uh,
household.
I'll kick you off this
Anyway,
Yeah.
podcast, but okay. All right. So moving on, yeah, for Isles versus Hurricanes, I feel like more people have been high on the Islanders. I don't know. I feel yes, they do have the playoff experience. They've made the conference finals twice in the past and they've faced Tampa both times, lost to Tampa both times. But that team definitely has shown that they can make it past 2 rounds plus. And yeah, they definitely have. And adding Bo Horvat this year definitely helped a lot more. I thought Bo Horvat was gonna go to like more contending wise team, but like mostly, yeah, the Islanders had definitely had some big help with them. Barzal's gonna be back for game one, but I have the Hurricanes in 6. I just think that even without Svechnikov, Carolina is such a good team. All the pieces they have, bringing on Brent Burns, which he's had a bounce back year for them. I think they have the better team. They have a better roster mostly. Yeah, I have them in 6.
One aspect you didn't bring up, though, Ilya Sorokin. I think Ilya
exactly.
Sorokin has what it takes to be a series stealer here. And even though, by all accounts, you're right, Carolina is a better team than the New York Islanders. Carolina, they aren't fully healthy. Like losing Svechnikov, losing Max Pacioretty, who hasn't really been healthy all season long. They also lost Andre Kasha. Like they are going to have trouble
Steve
finding
Suggen.
offensive depth there, but they still are, by all accounts, a better team than the New York Islanders. But the New York Islanders have that playoff style they are known to play. They're a defensive team. They wear you down. They find weaknesses and they attack those weaknesses. They're a team that knows how to come alive in the playoffs. They don't have great offensive depth, but they do actually have a decent top 6 now with Barzal and Bo Horvat playing together. Their defensive core is actually pretty good with guys like Adam Pelech, Ryan Pulock, and with one of the best goalies in the entire league. I am one of those people that's taking that upset. I'm going with New York Islanders to win in 7.
And I'm gonna go with. I'm gonna have to respectfully disagree with Jared there and agree with Max. I'm gonna take Carolina in 7. Obviously, you got Sorokin, who's been great this year. Vezina candidate, if a guy by the name of what's his name?
Linus Ullmark.
Linus Ullmark didn't exist, but yeah, no, the Islanders are a great team, and they're like Jared said, they're built for playoff hockey. They've got that grit in them, and they just always find a way in the postseason to go far, no matter which seed they are. And I think that it's a tough opponent for them against a team that's found success in the first round a lot these last few years. And I think the Islanders will give them a run for their money, but I just think Carolina's too strong. I think they're built really well. They got they got players to counter attack. New York's offensive guys like Horvat and Barzal, and then I know Islanders are nice. They've got a good defense, but I think you got pieces like Aho and Teravainen and Natchez, who's had a great year, that can really step it up. Last year, Carolina had guys that you wouldn't really expect to take that position in games that they needed. Jarvis, there's Seth Jarvis who had a good postseason. Max Domi, think about so. Yeah, I think Carolina's good. I think they're well built throughout. Be a tough series, but Carolina in 7 for me. I think they're just too
Okay.
well built.
The only thing I'll add to that is Carolina is a better defensive team. They're a team that plays a
Yeah,
really good
exactly.
defensive system, but they, in terms of 5-on-5 scoring, like even strength scoring, they've been really bad this year, actually. They have a lot of struggles, and they're a team that I've previously, last year, they were my cup winner. I've previously been really high on this team in the sense of the way they're built through their defense, but their 5-on-5 scoring is shockingly bad. And when they're going up against a goalie like Ilya Sorokin, if they were to play the Panthers, no question I would have them winning. But the fact that they're playing a team with a fantastic goaltender, I just can't see an injured Carolina team that's losing three big pieces on their offensive core being able to weather that storm and finding ways to break through one of the best goalies in the league. Like, if it was a worse goalie in front of them, they'd have a shot, but I don't know. With Svechnikov out, that is a huge blow. I know they still have talent up front and still have top six talent, but without Pacioretty, without Svechnikov, and even Kasha, who we saw it even last year, he's a good bottom six guy that would have added a lot of offensive depth for the Carolina Hurricanes that they're really missing right now and they're really lacking right now. I really think if I'm talking about a potential upset of a series, if there's any wildcard team I could see taking out a top seed, it would be the New York Islanders.
All right.
All right.
Moving on to the next one. I feel like this is the most mixed series out of all of them in the playoffs. I have the Rangers in 7. I feel like the Devils haven't done anything. They haven't been in the playoffs since like 2018 when they lost to Tampa and like I think they were swept or something. I don't remember fully, but yeah,
They lost in 5.
they have no playoff experience at all. I know I've mentioned playoff experience a lot. Obviously, it isn't everything for the playoffs, but still, playoff experience is something. Rangers got two like top of the market forwards somehow. Got both of them. Well, Patrick Kane was kind of different situation, but like got both of them for relatively cheap. Both have been amazing for them. Their top six, I think, is probably the top six forwards is probably the best in the NHL. But yeah, I have them in 7. I don't think the Devils are ready for the playoffs yet. They're obviously a young team. They're gonna be good for a long, long time with that young team. But yeah, Vanacek hasn't really done much in the playoffs. Vanacek used to be a backup to Samsonov. But yeah, I just don't see the Devils doing much in the playoffs until at least next year. That's why I have the Rangers in 7. I think they will put up a good battle, but I feel like in like a 7 game series, the Rangers can definitely be better than them. They have the experience. They have Patrick Kane who won 3 cups, and I just think they can definitely beat the Devils.
Absolutely. I mean, the Devils remind me a lot of like the early rebuild Leafs, like after their first few years where they were making the playoffs, but they always for years had that reputation where they were soft. If a team pressured them defensively or physically, they would fold over and die. And the Devils kind of remind me a little bit like that because they're really good offensively. Their top six is fantastic. They don't have a lot of offensive depth, but they're also not very physical. And even though physicality isn't everything, when you're facing a New York Rangers team that has its fair share of physicality throughout its lineup, I just don't see a way they're going to be able to respond to that. And as well, they have a great top six, as do the New York Rangers. But in terms of their bottom six, in terms of their goaltending, they just are totally beaten by the New York Rangers. I mean, the Devils are great up front, but their bottom six and the fact that they have Vitek Vanacek in net, it's just very hard to then justify them taking down a team that's very deep with all 4 offensive lines who also then has Igor Shesterkin in the net. I just don't see a way they could take them down. The Devils are better than the Rangers defensively. It's not a very high bar to set because, I mean, the Rangers are pretty awful defensively behind Adam Fox. But I just think in terms of the offensive depth and the goaltending, it's a night and day difference. They're not strong. They're not physical. There's a lot of things that I can nitpick about this team. And for that reason, I think it's fair to say they just aren't ready. They'll make the playoffs. They'll have a good showing. I think they'll steal 2 games from the Rangers. But after that, they'll be sent packing pretty.
And I'm gonna actually take the minority on you guys. I have New Jersey. And I think this, not physicality wise, but I think this Devils team reminds me a lot of New York last year. The way I think they're a team that nobody really expects to go that far. I don't think many team. I think a lot of. I don't know. That's disagree. I think
The
the
Rangers made the
Rangers.
conference finals last year.
I know. I'm saying before the playoffs. I know. Actually, that's not true.
But they still had the Vezina winner, right? Like, even though
Yeah.
I personally didn't predict them going very far, I remember I had Pittsburgh beating them in that first round series is my prediction. And I mean, it almost happened until Crosby got injured, but that's off topic. They still going into the playoffs. If all else failed, you can still say they have the Vezina Trophy winner. They have Igor Shesterkin. And the fact that they're facing, like the Devils are facing Igor Shesterkin in the first round, and their goalie is a guy who had a decent year compared to his expectations, but Vitek Vanacek was nothing special. I just don't see that guy being a series stealer, whereas Igor Shesterkin absolutely was capable of being.
And that's once again I'm gonna have to disagree with you because I think you're forgetting a lot of last year. I think Shesterkin was very shaky in that first round. New York altogether was very shaky. They were down 3-1. They got past that series with an overtime goal. In Game 7,
and against
Shesterkin was
like the third
taking.
goalie. Penguins third
Shesterkin
goalie.
definitely cleaned it up in the Shesterkin cleaned it up in the second round. But no, not really against Tampa, but still, he was pulled. Remember, I remember a few games. Georgiev at first. I still don't know how to say his name, but Georgiev still went into the. He was the starter a couple of games. Because Shesterkin was really struggling, and this New Jersey team, can, has the defensive pieces to shut down, not fully shut down that New York top six is ridiculous, but to stop a lot of New York's offense, and then again, you got like a fast young team like Jack Hughes, Timo Meyer. Last year, Pittsburgh, the reason Pittsburgh lost, I think a lot of it was they were too old. They weren't able to catch up with New York's craftiness. But now the Rangers are playing a team that are similar to them, as in they're young. They got star pieces that are still up and coming. They're hungry. They haven't had much playoff experience. In this Devil team, I think they're really balanced throughout. I don't really like their bottom six that well, and I think New York's depth beats them there, and I think the Rangers can snag a few wins because their bottom six can take them away, and especially that top six too. I mean, that's a scary forward core. But I don't know. I just have a feeling about this Devils team this year where you know, they're just a young, hungry team, and I think they're just going to come into the playoffs and have a smooth transition. And I think they can beat the Rangers in 7 games. I know a fair amount of people disagree with me, but I don't know. I think there's just, I don't think I think a lot of people are going to be high on the Rangers because of their run last year, and I honestly see them having one of the worst possible opponents in round one. I'm going to take the Devils, regardless of physicality. I think the Devils can take this if they outskill their opponent and defend well against the Rangers.
The only thing I'll say to that is Igor Shesterkin, you're right. He struggled at the start of the playoffs. I mean, they were down 3-1, and they only really were able to crawl their way back out once injuries piled up and whatever. But the fact was, going into that series, it was always a factor that if Igor Shesterkin reaches the gear that he showed us that season he was capable of, the Rangers were going to be fine. Sure enough, he started the playoffs bad, and the Rangers were bad. Then he played to the best of his ability, and the Rangers were flying over to the Eastern Conference Finals. I don't think Vitek Vanacek has that gear that he can get to. He is a fine goaltender. He's all right. Like, I'm not going to criticize him, but I don't think there's any gear that he could get to that could take this team flying. Whereas on the other end, the Rangers with Shesterkin absolutely do. They live and die on Shesterkin, but at his best, he is a top 3 goalie in the league. And even to the other factor you were saying that last year the Rangers started off struggling, but then their youth and their speed is what was able to get them through the Penguins. Well, it's not like the Devils are playing an old and slow team. The Devils are playing that youthful, skilled Rangers team that now just has one more year worth of experience, but they're still a young, fast, hungry team. I'm not going to disagree with the pick. I mean, it's surely possible that the Devils could win. They're a fantastic team as well. There's a reason that they're second place in the Metro, and for that reason, they're the mathematical favorite. But I just think to say that the Devils are going to win because they're going to replicate what the Rangers did last year. Well, the Rangers, it was a totally different scenario because they were playing an old and slow team, and they had to rely on a bunch of injuries. And the fact that they have a top 3 goalie in the league, that's really all it was that ended up being able to take them on that deep run.
Which is why I think also this is going to be such a good series. It's 2 young teams with a lot of skill, and it's going to be a great matchup. Unfortunately, they have it set up against right before the Leafs Tampa, so won't be able to catch much of it. But anyways, good series there. That'll be a fun one. Can go either way. Still sticking with the Devils, but yeah, definitely Rangers is for sure possible.
All right,
absolutely.
So moving on to the Western Conference.
You want to go over to the West. So that's what I was going to ask. Do you want to finish the East first or go over to the West?
Yeah, let's just go to the West and we just go round by round. All right.
Yeah, perfect.
So moving on to the Western Conference, we have Colorado versus Seattle. I feel like this is a
something that we talk
no-brainer
about much.
for most, if not all people, except Kraken fans. I have Colorado, but I feel
Crackheads.
like I just don't
And
know
my
why.
brother.
I don't know why, but I have a feeling
Actually,
that
This is
Colorado is
sweeping
gonna
them.
that
Kyle is Seattle sweeping the Avalanche, and he had something else weird. I don't remember, but his finals is the Devils versus the Kraken,
oh god,
with the
okay.
Kraken winning the cup.
it's the closest to
That
Vancouver. That's probably why. All right.
Probably.
So yeah, I'm talking
I agree.
yeah about the Kraken Avalanche series. I don't know why, but I have the Kraken taking 2 games. I know most people have them just taking one, but I have the Kraken taking 2 games. They're a young, new, hungry team looking to just do anything they can against one of the best teams in the NHL. They know they have to put up the best they can to beat them. Is Andre Burakovsky back yet? I don't fully remember.
No, he's
He
out.
isn't currently listed on their lineup, but obviously that could be a game time decision by the
Yeah.
time game one starts.
Like if he does come back, that maybe be good for them because he played on the Avs last year. He knows their team a little bit, obviously. Yeah, I feel like
Inside job.
it's kind of a no brainer. It's kind of a no brainer for Colorado, but I do have the Kraken taking 2 games. I know most people have them like 5 games or sweep, but I feel like the Kraken they can't. They definitely can like do more than that. Possibly do more than that, but I feel like 6 is the most they capped out, and then yeah, that's why I have Colorado at 6.
Yeah, I'm one of those people that's going with Colorado winning it in 5. Seattle is a team that they had a great year. They surprised everyone. But if you look at the stats and how they were scoring well above their goals expected. Like basically, that's basically the luck stat. It basically tracks what percentage of shots you were taking when in the net. And they basically broke a historical record of one of the luckiest teams ever. Against the Colorado Avalanche, you're not going to get that same luck. I think the well is going to run dry, and it's kind of going to expose probably the skill level that this team has, which they're good, they're getting there, they're young, they're youthful, but they really aren't a team that probably belongs in the playoffs. They got very lucky this year in terms of their goals above expected, and I think that's going to run very dry, even though the Avalanche have a lot of injuries, even though I don't necessarily even see them going on that deep of a playoff run because I don't love their goaltending. I think no question they'll be able to take 4 games against this Seattle Kraken team. I'll give the Kraken a game, but it'll be a pretty quick and easy series for the Avalanche.
Yeah, and I'm gonna have to agree with you there. I'm gonna go 5 games. Seattle can steal a game. They're gonna have to play their best hockey in franchise history in order to get past the first round. And yeah, it's just like one of the worst possible opponents, sorry, playing the reigning cup champs. I don't think they put up much of a battle. Their goaltending isn't that strong. Neither is their defense. Their offense. I mean, I think they're a few steps away on each all over. And I'm happy that they had a really good year, 100 points. It's a really big accomplishment for a team in their second year. The bar was set so high because of Vegas. But still, I think Seattle, I think you take what you got this year. You're really impressed with. I'm really impressed with what they did, but uh, I don't think they put up much of a contest. Give me Avs in 5.
Yeah, right. It's pretty reasonable. We all predicted. Moving on, we have the second central matchup. We have Dallas versus Minnesota. I have Dallas in 7. Last year, I was kind of high on Minnesota. Sadly, they didn't even make it past the first round, and I think that's what's gonna happen this year. I feel like Dallas has the squad. They got they got like Max Domi at the deadline, which definitely does help bolster up their depth. He was the best. He had the most points on the Blackhawks before the deadline when both him
Blackhawks.
and yeah the Blackhawks before him and Kane got traded. So he was playing pretty good for the Blackhawks, but it was pretty obvious he's gonna be traded into the Stars. Has helped them out. Also did the Gurionov trade that was a little bit interesting, but I feel like that's worked out kind of in their favor a little bit. Just to have someone that's since he's older, he has more experience. And yeah, I feel like they should have a good team. Ottinger's been really good this year. Yeah, there's no doubt about that. The Wild, yes, the Wild arguably have one of the best goalie tandem in the NHL. Gustafsson has his breakout year, and Fleury's not obviously not as good anymore, but he's still doing what Fleury does. They have Kaprizov, who got back recently, so he's back for the playoffs. Good team. They traded basically nothing for Klingberg. They have really good defensive depth in the sense that Klingberg is, I think, is on their third D line. Yeah, they have a good team all around, but I feel like Dallas has the playoff experience. They made it to the finals a few years ago. They have Sagan and Ben, which are both good vets. Ben's had a bounce back season. Jason Robertson, obviously, who's a Hart nominee. I'm pretty sure. I'm pretty sure he's gonna be a Hart nominee or something like that. But yeah, really good year for him too. There's not much else to say about that. Yeah, Dallas in 7. That's my opinion.
Yeah, I'm also actually going exactly that. I'm going with Dallas in 7. Minnesota is a lot better of a defensive team than the Dallas Stars are, even though Dallas arguably has the best defenseman in the entire series with Miro Heiskanen. It's a fun little rematch of, John Klingberg playing against his old team in the playoffs. That should be fun. But
Yeah.
in general, in terms of offensive depth, and especially my biggest argument is in terms of goaltending, I just think that Stars are significantly better than the Minnesota Wild. The Stars are deeper, even though they maybe don't have an offensive player. Yes, Jason Robertson's great. I still don't think they have a player as good as Kirill Kaprizov. He is the best player in the entire series. But I just think they're, at least between their first 3 lines, I think their top 9 is, I'd argue, one of the strongest in at least the Western Conference, maybe even the entire league. It's a really strong top 9 unit. They have 3 consistent scoring lines, but they're also a team that, in terms of their coaching, knows how to play that good defensive style. That'll help out their goaltender. And then in general, I'd argue they have the second best goalie in the entire Western Conference behind Connor Hellebuck. And with that being said, with Jake Ottinger, even though Philip Gustafsson and Marc-Andre Fleury is a pretty good goalie tandem, I just don't think it could take down the highs that are Jake Ottinger. Best goalie in the series, one of the best goalies in the conference, better, deeper offensively, a better scoring team. I think there's just too much not to like about the Dallas Stars. I'm going with them taking down the Minnesota Wild.
Yeah, and you said it. You guys all said in 7 games.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, both of us
I'm
7-7.
I'm gonna agree with you guys there. Yeah, this is gonna be I think, a much tighter series than people expect. Minnesota's defensive depth is really strong, and I just thought about that for the first time when Jared said that it's Klingberg against his former team. But this Minnesota team can put up a good fight, and I had them winning the cup last year. I think that was not really smart. That wasn't my greatest opinion after getting bounced around on. Hopefully, my 2 finals predictors or predictions aren't bouncing around on. But anyways, I like the Stars are really good this year. They're really strong forward core. They a lot of their guys got much better this year. I mean, talk about Jamie Benn. I don't think anybody expected him to be almost a point per game pace. Play this have, that type of season. But I think Dallas is just a little bit better, a little bit more playoff experience. And I don't know, the Wild, I feel like, just stuck in mediocrity. Uh, I don't know how long they'll be stuck in that area, but I think the Stars will be able to take them down. Wild could put up a good fight, and I wouldn't be shocked if the Wild could win. They have the pieces, like Kaprizov. They have a superstar. Yeah, so I think the Wild put up a good fight, but I'm gonna go with Stars in 7 games.
Yeah, we all agreed there. So moving on to the next series, it is the Vegas Golden Knights versus the Winnipeg Jets. This is a little bit of a weird one because both of them were out of the playoffs last year, and they're both back this year. One of them as the best team in the Pacific, and one of them as the worst team in the West for the playoffs. And for this one, I have Winnipeg in 7. I feel like Winnipeg's the goaltending is like the non-comparable. It's starter versus backup, basically. Brassois was Hellebuck's backup for 3 years. Hellebuck's just a way better goalie overall. I like Winnipeg's forwards. Picked up some good forwards in the Domestic Cup, and
And
Shoot.
Nino
Niederreiter.
Yeah, Nina Ryder at the deadline, which definitely help bolster up their forward depth and like whole core. So they got Shifley, they got some vets and Wheeler, and like they got they don't I was about to say line. They got Pierre Luc Dubois. They have a good team, and I like them a lot. Morrissey finally had his breakout year, where he's been doing pretty good. And yeah, I have them in 7. Obviously, Vegas is an amazing team, but like I don't see how I just don't see how Vegas can like make it that far with this team. Like obviously they were really good, but last year they didn't even make the playoffs. They do have Jack Eichel this year, which they did have last year, but they do have him. They did have him for the full year. But Jack Eichel really hasn't done anything in the playoffs. So yeah, I have Winnipeg in 7. I feel like people are a little bit mixed on this. Like this is probably the most mixed series, or one of the most mixed series. But yeah, I have them Winnipeg in 7.
I'm going with Winnipeg in 6. I think the goaltending difference is night and day, and that is a reason alone to pick this team to win in 6 games. I don't even know if it goes to that final elimination game. I think Winnipeg's goaltending will absolutely put the Vegas Golden Knights on the ropes in this series, even though there's a lot to like about Vegas's overall team. And to counter with that, there's also a lot of holes and flaws on the Winnipeg Jets that I will admit to. They aren't a very deep offensive team. They have a fantastic top 6, but their bottom 6 is kind of where offense goes to die. It's not great. But with a fantastic top 6, with actually a sneaky good defensive core, I really like their defensive core. I don't think it gets enough credit, even though they've been a really good defensive team this year. They have guys like Dylan DeMello. They have, of course, Josh Morrissey, who had a great year, Neil Pionk, Nate Schmidt. They have a really good defensive core, Brandon Dillon. But as well, it's Connor Hellebuck. He's the best goalie in the entire conference. And for that reason, I think this Winnipeg Jets team could do some damage. Talking a little bit more about Vegas, they're a team that's been heavily injured this year. Of course, they're without their starting goaltender, the guy that was the starter for a large part of the year. That, of course, being rookie goalie Logan Thompson. He had a great start to the year. Then he fell off with injury, and since then hasn't been able to return to the net. They got Jonathan Quick, who has a lot of playoff experience, but he's an older guy that is just far from his prime. I just don't see how he's able to outdo Connor Hellebuck in a series. And in general, their best defensive forward, Mark Stone, one of the best defensive forwards in the entire league, even though he might be healthy to play in game 1, he's coming off of a back surgery, and that is not something that you're going to come back and right away be back to your best of your ability. Like, he is going to be struggling. Their whole team essentially has had major injuries for the last half of the year, and even if they're healthy enough to play in game 1, I just don't think their offensive abilities, which would be their main advantage against Winnipeg, I don't think they're going to be at the best of their ability. And for that reason, I think Winnipeg's defense and especially their goaltending will be able to take the Vegas Golden Knights down in 6 games.
And I'm actually going to agree with Max. Winnipeg in 7. Vegas definitely has the
3 of us
ability to
Winnipeg.
Yeah, it's kind of weird, eh? But I don't know. I think the Jets just this year they have kind of that upset kind of way about them. I don't know how to describe it. I mean, not I mean usually one year every year there's like one team you're like okay, if there's a one wild card team that has a good matchup, I guess this year you got two. I mean the Islanders have a really good chance of beating Carolina. But I think this is the other one where I think a lot of people might just think about okay, Vegas, they've been in the playoffs and they're successful every year. I think this is a year where the Jets combined with their fan base on home ice, it's going to be brutal to play there. Vegas is a team that's in a hot area. Jeez, can't talk. Hot area. Used to. I don't know if Vegas has the greatest fan base or what. But either way, I mean that Jets fan base is hardcore. Um, I would hate to be a player in the playoffs in Winnipeg. And I mean, in previous series, the Jets have been able to put up have been able to, that home ice has really been able to hurt the other teams. And I think a lot of the reason why they got swept by Montreal that one year is they didn't really have that momentum at the beginning of the series with their crowd. But anyways, I think still the Jets very strong team. For its defense, goaltending. There's not many holes in this team if you compare them to Vegas. And this Jets team has been in has gone on many multiple runs with the same core. They've got some really strong players. Morrissey had a fantastic year. He's someone I'm looking to see, is he going to step up in the playoffs? And obviously, you've seen Connor Hellebuck go take the Jets on some really good playoff runs. So, yeah, just I think Vegas won't see it coming. I don't know. Just the Jets look good this year. And they're obviously going to cheer for every Canadian team to go far. So, I'm rooting for the Jets in this one, and I think they'll take them down in 7 games. I think it'll be a little bit closer than Jared said. But yeah, Jets.
Even for the reasons you said, with how crazy that home ice is, with how crazy that fan base is,
Sure.
that's something that could help justify Winnipeg in 6, because it'll be, if it does go to the very end of that series, Game 6 would be in Winnipeg, Game 7 would be in Vegas. If Winnipeg's the team with that 3-2 lead going into that 6th game, how do you then predict them to lose in front of home ice? Like, how do you predict that?
Yeah,
It's like the Mars daughter, but a whole arena. All right,
Exactly. Oh my God, that's a whole different situation, eh?
all right.
That's crazy.
So moving on to the I almost said Hurricanes. Oilers versus Kings matchup. Rematch of last year. I'm going with my gut. I'm going with exactly what I said last year, and I have the Kings in 7. Look, man, I know
Kings in 7, okay.
they have McDavid, they have Draisaitl, they got Ekholm, but like I just see the Kings as a team with good playoff experience. I know I mentioned that a lot. I know I already said this, but obviously it's not like everything. They picked up Fiala last offseason, which was definitely a big help. They got the
Jared, if you let me
pieces.
counter first. If you let me counter
Yeah.
first, okay.
Yeah, perfect.
Okay, go ahead, Max. Go.
They got the pieces to beat a team like the Oilers. They almost did last year. They took the Oilers 2-7 last year. But I just see the Kings as a team on top. Stuart Skinner and Eunice Corbasalo kind of equal. I'd say kind of equal in just like how like playing style and how good they are. But yeah, I just feel like they got the Kings defense. Obviously, the Oilers one was like Oilers got way better at the deadline, but I just think Kings also got Gavrikov and Korpisalo on the same deal, which is that'd be a big help for them. It was kind of disrespectful to trade quick like that. But yeah, I feel like in a 7 game series, I have the Kings. Look, man, the Oilers, yes, they made it to the conference finals last year, but they got swept by the Colorado Avalanche. Like they have Connor McDavid, Leon Draisaitl, but I just don't think that's gonna be enough to beat the Kings.
And I think
Yeah.
to counter your point, in that Colorado series, I think the Avalanche are a better team, much better team last year than this year. So if they match up in the playoffs, which is a very high chance, it could definitely go a much different way. But that's not where we are just yet. We're talking about Edmonton, LA. This LA team, they get younger every year. I feel like so they have Doughty and Kopitar from their playoff runs. They're good leaders. They aren't as good as what they used to be, but they're good leaders. This Kings team, it's very strong, and in a different scenario, I could see them going far. But you're playing against a really hungry Connor McDavid, a really hungry Leon Draisaitl, and this Oilers team got so much better from last year. And what I like most about what they did this year is they addressed their needs for their first time like ever. They took care of being strong defensively, and I think last year what we saw a lot of is Mike Smith being really stupid. He was horrible in net. And I think that showed against Colorado. He was horrible. And it's a fluke that he was the starter for them when they got to the conference finals. But I think now with a much better goaltender with Stuart Skinner and a defensive
And
core
Soup.
that's going to be able to and a defensive core that's going to be able to shut them down a lot better than last year. And then you also got a guy who led the league in goals and assists. McDavid's going to get like 2 points tonight at least. I think LA definitely picks up a good fight, and similar and exactly like last year. I think they take it to 7 games just because I think the Kings are a great team. They're a few pieces away, if they played Golden Knights, I could see even the Kings beating the Golden Knights. I could see the Kings beating the Wilds, a few teams in the Western Conference, maybe a few teams in the East. I don't want to look over all of them now, but this Kings team is strong. But I think it's really hard to choose one of the Cup favorites this year to get knocked out in round one, and especially when the team that you're going against a guy that went to the conference finals last year and he's the greatest player on earth. So um, you know what? It would have been more like blasphemous if you said LA in 6 or LA in 5, but you know what? LA in 7, I could see maybe game 7 just they just take a few good they get a few good goals and things go their way. But I don't know. I think the Oilers take it at 7. I don't want to talk too much, but I did. Sorry, Jared, go ahead.
Yeah, so I'm going to go with the Oilers in 7 as well. I do think the Kings are good enough to push this series the distance. I think just like last year, it will go to 7. I'd even argue the Kings are like significantly better than they were last year. They're a lot better defensively. They're a lot better in net, which is a huge advantage. Getting both Gavrikov and Korpisalo. I think they're a good team. I think they're a good shutdown team. That's going to help them take it the distance. Maybe even if they played last year with their current team, if they played last year's iteration of the Oilers, I can even see this team winning. But the Oilers, whereas last year it was kind of the two-man show with McDavid and Draisaitl, they're getting performances by committee right now. And I don't know if Ken Holland listened to my online rants I was putting out there, but he actually had a good deadline. He got some bottom six depth with Nick Bjugstad. He got some defensive help with Matthias Ekholm. But as well, the rest of the top 6, whereas last year it was kind of just the big 2 guys, they're getting performances from everyone. Ryan Nugent-Hopkins was over an 100-point player. Zach Hyman was an 80-plus point player. Like, these guys are stepping up big time. Didn't even mention Evander Kane. Like, they're getting performances from all throughout their lineup. And even though I don't think their goaltending is great, I still think Edmonton's goaltending is something that's preventing me from picking them to win a Stanley Cup. Even their defense is improved. I think it'll be enough to weather a storm against a good defensive team like the LA Kings. I still don't think it's perfect. I could see them getting upset later on in the playoffs. But in this first round, I just really struggle to see a team like the LA Kings that good defensively, decent in net, but not very good in terms of offensive ability. How do you then counter the greatest scoring team we've ever seen in NHL history?
Yeah. And Max, and I'll give you, and I think us too, and a lot of hockey fans will give you respect if you end up being right. I think you should get I'm gonna give you a lot of props because going against McDavid and Draisaitl this year is a really hot take, and this series could really go down to the wire. So I'll definitely, if the Kings take it, I'll definitely give you props because you would call it, but I think right now the favorite is the Oilers, and me and Jared sticking with the favorite here, but I like going with the underdog.
I will say later in the playoffs, I could see a better goalie than Korpisalo being able to stop McDavid and shut down McDavid and Draisaitl. Actually,
for sure.
I'm seeing everywhere. I'm seeing the same Stanley Cup Finals. I'm not going to say because I don't know if one of you guys have it, but I'm seeing that same Stanley Cup Finals, and I kind of think Edmonton is still at risk of being shut down because Ken Holland did a good job of fixing their holes, but there are still holes in that.
Yeah,
McDavid and Draisaitl could score their way out of the holes, and I'm not going to doubt or bet against them. But in terms of making these predictions, I can see a better defensive and a better goaltending team absolutely shutting down the Edmonton Oilers. But in this round, the Kings are good defensively and good in net, but not good enough, in my opinion. The Oilers should run this show. It'll go the distance, but in 7, I'm going to the Oilers.
Can we like keep this Oilers thing going and go with the next series of the Oilers Kings winner versus
I'm good with that. We'll do the Western Conference, then go over to the East.
All right.
I bet. So Max, you start off.
Yeah, I just want to mention, I think the only series all of us have the same is the Avalanche versus Stars. I'm pretty sure it's the only one that we all have the exact same. All right, so moving on.
Yeah, you're right.
You have Avalanche in 6. I think the only one we had the exact same.
No, I'm talking about the second round. I'm talking about the second round. Like
we all have Colorado.
Like
Dallas?
Colorado versus Dallas.
Oh,
we all have that.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah.
So moving on, my second round series is Winnipeg versus LA. And in this series, we already kind of mentioned everything about both teams. Literally just like 5 minutes ago, 5 plus minutes ago. And I have Winnipeg, the second wildcard team, making it even farther and going to the conference finals. I feel like that goaltending, like I mentioned before against Vegas, that goaltending just goes a very long way. The Bucks have been outstanding this year, and I see them beating LA with that playoff team that we mentioned earlier. That playoff team that has had like a million runs where they've made it second round, third round, conference finals, not the Stanley Cup Finals, but they made second round conference finals a few times. I see them making the conference finals. LA, like you guys mentioned before, they got Dowdy Kopitar, who have won cups in the past with the LA Kings, but just in looking at this Winnipeg team, they just have a really good team, have way better goaltending comparing Connor Hellebuck to Jonas Corposalo, and that's why I have them. There's no games, but yeah, I just have Winnipeg beating the Kings.
Yeah, I'm gonna have as well. It's my battle is the Edmonton Oilers versus the Winnipeg Jets. I don't know if you guys remember who I had in the preseason making it to the Stanley Cup Finals. Even at the trade deadline, I hinted that I think this team could potentially even come out of the West, and I'm sticking by it. They're facing one of the greatest offensive teams in NHL history, but the Winnipeg Jets have the advantage on defense and especially in net. Like miles and miles better. I think Stuart Skinner, Jack Campbell are good enough to outmatch and outduel a Jonas Corposalo. They're not good enough to go toe to toe and win against Connor Hellebuck. I think Connor Hellebuck is the only goalie in this entire Western Conference that I could see shutting the door on Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl. The Winnipeg Jets have kind of struggled the past few years in terms of they missed the playoffs last year. Even when they made the playoffs, made the second round in 2021, they got shut out in the second round. He's kind of getting up there in age. He doesn't have a Stanley Cup Finals appearance. He doesn't have a Stanley Cup. I'm not saying they're going to get there, but I'm saying against this second round series, they're going to see, okay, all we have to contend with is a really strong offensive team. Connor Hellebuck is going to be like, hey, guys, I got this.
I got you.
Connor Hellebuck is going to shut the door.
Yeah, and this is ridiculous because I guess we all have Winnipeg going to the conference finals. I mean,
Someone isn't so crazy anymore. I seem to remember a time where I picked them going to the Stanley Cup Finals, and I was getting some scoffs and some faces. And
I mean, I think
apparently everyone coincidentally is just copying Jared here.
But I think a lot of what we thought at the beginning of the year, which has changed, is because the locker room situation was horrible at the beginning of the year, and that's something we haven't heard.
Kind of is. Like if you look at the end of the season, look at the quotes that like Rick Bowness was making, their coach was making. Like the coach still calls out the players left, right, and center. Like I still have concerns, even with my prediction. I still have concerns with their locker room. But I think they're a skilled enough team that they could play through those locker room issues. Like, I think they'll always be there. I don't think they're a perfect team. But when you have the second or third best goalie in the world, I think you're able to withstand that.
They stripped Wheeler of his captaincy at the start of the year as well, which was pretty brutal for.
Exactly.
I feel like everyone. I don't think at the deadline anyone kind of thought about Wheeler being traded, but at the start of the season, I feel like a bunch of people were thinking that Wheeler was going to be traded, but they didn't. And look where we have him right now.
And I think just in general, the Jets just had a bounce back year all around. I mean, Hellebuck wasn't that strong last year. I mean, I just don't think like that. The reason why I think you were just one. You have to have been one in millions. You thought the Jets would be able to really turn the ship around, but now after what we've seen this year, where they've had lots of players be consistent, and especially in that they have the upper hand goaltending wise, defensive wise. Definitely not forwards, because McDavid and Draisaitl are going to bring their all. But we saw this Jets Oilers team. The Jets swept them a few years ago, which is ridiculous to think about, especially after the year the Oilers had last year. But I think with the Jets, just I don't know, they got a really strong group of guys, and they're gritty and playing in Winnipeg really sucks. And I think where the Oilers lack, the Jets, kind of have those pieces. And it's just I don't know. I think they're just their depth is better than Edmonton's, even though the Oilers have a great best their top forwards is ridiculous. But After that, I think it trails a lot. And that's where Winnipeg doesn't really have that. I mean, after there's top six is very strong, but then you got guys on your third line like Niederreiter and Adam Lowry. So I think the that Winnipeg can really do some damage. I don't know. I think the Jets series I've been thinking about for a while, especially with Vegas, is like injuries that okay, I don't know. I think Winnipeg will take this. I've been thinking that for a little while now, especially considering that the Jets Vegas series has been confirmed for a little while now. Well, not confirmed, but pretty much gonna happen. But I don't know. Listening, I don't know, just talking about it and it seems a lot more, I don't know, like that the Jets would have it. I think at the beginning of the podcast, I did have the Jets. I think that was a little bit that I was on the fence on, but I think with the oil, I think more thinking about it, talking about it, this Winnipeg team is just stronger. And I don't know. The Oilers had a potentially you could call it a fluke run last year with their horrible defense and goaltending, and they're a better team, and they're not going to get swept. That's for sure. But this game could go 6 or 7 games, and probably the Oilers could even pull it out of the bag. That's not even ridiculous to say. There's a higher chance that they do pull it out of the bag if you look at these two teams. But I don't know. Just have a feeling like the Jets this year.
Yeah, and I think it does go 7, no question. But part of the reason why I would lean in with the Jets over the Oilers in a series is even though the Oilers are miles better offensively and the Jets are miles better defensively and in net, the Jets are a lot better at the Oilers' strength and at matching the Oilers' offensive ability. Like, even though the Oilers' top six is significantly better than the Jets' top six, the Jets still have scoring threats in their top six.
Yeah.
But
sure.
Looking at the other end, like the difference between Connor Hellebuck and Stuart Skinner and Jack Campbell is so great. The difference between the Jets' defensive core and the Oilers' defensive core, they're miles apart. So I think even though the Oilers' one strength in offense is significantly better than the Jets is, I think the fact that the Jets are at least a decent enough scoring team, they'll then be able to use the fact that they're so much greater defensively and in net. So to take them down in 7 games, it'll go the distance, but I think they're good enough to shut them down, take them down, and go over to the conference finals.
And another all Canadian series in the second round with the Oilers. That'll be very entertaining when if you get to see that. But I don't know. I guess Max doesn't even care because he is in LA. Moving on to Colorado, Dallas, or Colorado. Yeah.
Right. Hold on. Give me a second.
Okay, while we give you a second, let's just kick it off. I'll kick it off.
First of all, I'll start off with mine because
Okay,
why
yeah,
not? I mean, Colorado versus the Dallas Stars. I don't know about you guys, but Colorado, they've been facing a lot of injuries this year.
Yeah.
Against the Seattle Kraken, they're able to weather that storm. They are able to get through. I see no reason why those injuries are going to affect them in that Seattle Kraken series. But they're going from a very weak first-round opponent to a team that I don't think gets enough credit in the Dallas Stars. The Dallas Stars are fantastic offensively. They're a grittier team than Colorado is. Even though they aren't better defensively than the Colorado Avalanche are, they still have a really good defensive core with guys like Miro Heiskanen that at the very least could help to counter Cale Makar. And then in net, Jake Ottinger is just miles and miles better than Pavel Francouz and Alexander Georgiev. And for that reason, I'm having the Dallas Stars beat the Colorado Avalanche, not in 7 games, in 6 games. I think this is finally where Colorado, the fact that they faced so much injuries throughout this year, it didn't affect them in the Seattle series, but they haven't really been able to be healthy and play together as a team and gather that chemistry like they were able to do in previous years. And I think Dallas is going to eat that alive. Dallas is also a lot better of a team on the road, whereas Colorado isn't that great on the road. I think there's a lot to like about these Dallas Stars, especially considering they have the second best goaltending in the entire Western Conference. I have them facing off against the best goaltending team in the Western Conference in my conference finals. It's Connor Hellebuck versus Jake Ottinger.
Okay. And Max, I guess.
All right. Yeah, I'll go next. So yeah, I have to agree with you there. I have the Colorado Avalanche beating the Dallas Stars. I feel like you went
You don't agree with me then?
Oh wait.
You were
no.
saying I have to agree with you, and then you went the opposite of my pick.
All right. Yeah. I don't know. I was focused on something else. My bad. All right. So apparently I don't agree with you here. I have the Colorado Avalanche beating the Dallas Stars. Yes, the Dallas Stars. They have Otter, which is one of the best teams in the West.
My bad.
One of the best goalies in the West. But I feel like this Colorado team, such top heavy compared to Dallas, can just overcome them. Nathan McKinnon, he had like he was injured for like a quarter of the season, something like that, and he still put up over 50 goals or something like that. Did he? Yeah, he put up over 50
So,
goals.
something
Well,
along those lines. Yeah, it
he's
was
fifth. He's fifth in point scoring, and he plays 71 games. It's
Exactly. He
really
missed
good.
11 games. And yeah, Nathan McKinnon, Mikko Rantanen, he got over 50 goals as well. And obviously they are losing their captain Gabriel Landeskog. They haven't had him for most of the season. They also aren't having him for the playoffs, but look at them, they're still first in the Central and second in the West. So I just think that this team, I feel like this Colorado Avalanche team, yes, you mentioned earlier in the pod that they aren't as good of a team as last year, but they're still such an outstanding team. Yes, they lost Darcy Kemper, but Alexander Georgiev's had a pretty good season, and I have them beating Dallas Stars. Kale McCarr, Miro Heiskanen, Kilmacar had had a step off, but I feel like he's still pretty good compared
oh,
to
he's still amazing.
Kilmacar.
He's
Yeah,
still
compared to
a
Miro's
weak
game.
season for him is still like a Norris caliber season.
All right.
Okay.
All right. I'll let you go.
Okay. So yeah. So for Colorado, Dallas, it's another good matchup. And I'm not gonna look at players one by one, offense, defense, but I'm gonna focus more on the Avalanche side of things. The Avs have played really have all, even though with all the injuries, they are still they still ended up as the one seed in the West, and they had their rough stretches. I mean, they were out of the playoff spot for a little bit. They were in a wild card spot for a little bit, but they ended up really closing it out, and I think with this, it's going to be a much harder challenge against the Stars, but I think the Avalanche um, are I don't know. I still think they're just such a good team. Without Landeskog, it's really going to hurt them. But I think you got Georgiev, who played really well. The defensive core is back. I saw somewhere saying everybody's back on defense. I'm losing Landeskog is really unfortunate, but I think that Avalanche team is really strong. They got McKinnon and Rantanen, so I don't know, I think they take down the Stars, but they know they finally can get past the second round. I think they will. Another good series, maybe 6 or 7. I think there's going to be a lot of 7 game series this year.
All right. All right. So yeah, moving on to the Eastern Conference for the second round. My my um my first second round is Boston versus Tampa. I have Boston beating Tampa. I feel like this is their year. I also forgot to mention this. I'm going to mention this really quickly. Boston and Florida kind of just swapped positions because last year Boston was the wild card and Florida was first in the Atlantic, and they switched. And it's kind of crazy that Boston. Kind of crazy to think about that Boston was wild card last year to what they've done this year. Yeah, I just wanted to mention that real
Well,
quick.
they would have ended up being the 3 seed in the Metro last year, but they were just the Leafs and Lightning were really good last year,
Alright.
so they couldn't
Yeah, I
do
just
it.
wanted to
So.
mention that really quickly. But yeah, moving on. Yeah, I have Boston. The goaltending is kind of weird because of Allmark just having a really good season this year. I'd say Allmark and Vasilevsky are like kind of even. If you think about it, they're kind of like even.
No, they're not. They're not even. Olmark has
You
played
don't think
like
so?
2 career playoff games.
Well, in the playoffs,
He
the
has
Lightning,
no like playoff
Vasilevsky
resume.
is no job.
Yeah,
I
but
mean,
not.
yeah, I mean, in the like this year, Allmark is miles better, but in the playoffs, there's been one goalie in these last few years that's been able to just be the greatest in the playoffs, and
Yeah,
All right, fine.
I
But yeah,
mean
like
that's
like
gonna
you
be tough
can't
for
put
Boston.
all your stock into Allmark because we don't know how he's gonna do in the playoffs. Like this season for him is a complete outlier in his career. It's
yeah.
like miles better than
It's
any
an
other season he's
it's
had.
Miles better than any other
Yeah.
goaltender. It's ridiculous.
Right. Yeah. So okay. Apparently I was saying it wrong, but yeah, they have really good forward core.
Okay.
Tampa's definitely top heavy compared to Boston, kind of maybe. But yeah, their top line is really amazing. But besides that, they don't really have many other good forwards besides maybe Sorelli and Hagel. And yeah, that was they traded a whole entire draft for Janot, which is injured right now, not even in the playoffs. So that was kind of
Ah,
pointless.
that's funny.
All
That's
right,
so funny because remember we were so scared about him. Like, oh, that's
all
funny.
right,
I'm not saying anything until we don't know if he's going to be back. So
all right.
Okay, true.
So yeah,
I thought he was out for the series, but anyways.
yeah, but yeah, like Tampa obviously has good defense, but it's worse than last year. They have Perbix on their first line, which I didn't hear much of this year. Um, they lost McDonough, which you mentioned earlier. Chernak is on the third line, which definitely shows that they do have defensive depth. But if you look to the Bruins, they have Hampus Lindholm, Charlie McAvoy. They picked up Dmitry Orlov. They have Grizzlick, Carlo. I'm not sure who the sixth is. I think it's like Forbert or Lazon. Yeah, they have really good.
I believe Forbert.
Yeah, so yeah, they have pretty good defensive depth too. Boston's forward. They have the top heavy, and then they have the outstanding depth. They got Bertuzzi and Hathaway at the deadline. Yeah, I just feel like Boston can definitely close out this series in probably like 6 games. And yeah, obviously we're on 7 games, but that's what I was thinking about. And yeah, Boston beating Tampa. All right,
Okay, I have a matchup between the Toronto Maple Leafs and the Boston Bruins.
here we
If
go.
the Leafs get through the Tampa Bay Lightning, they are getting through the Boston Bruins. I'm putting that out there. If they win the first round, I'm not going to say I'm not scared of the Boston Bruins, but we could beat
Yeah.
them. Our teams in 2018, 2019, when we were just starting to consistently make the playoffs, remember how weak defensively we were? Remember how everyone described the same things we were talking about with the Devils. The Devils. Everyone's like, "Oh, the Leafs are so weak. The Leafs are so soft." Those Leafs teams took the Boston Bruins to 7 games. We are miles better than we used to be. We're so much better defensively. We're so much deeper than we used to be. We have so much more depth, but also our top 6 guys, they've come into form now. At the time, Matthews, Martin were fantastic players, but they weren't as dominant as they are now. Matthews was not considered a 60-point or 60-goal guy. Martin wasn't anywhere near 100 points back in those seasons. Like, our team is significantly more improved. And even though we're definitely very comparable with the Bruins in a lot of categories. I think goaltending, I don't know if you guys are going to agree with me. I'm not putting all my stock into Allmark just because Allmark's never had a season as good as this. And I think with the Leafs being so good defensively and with Samsonov having a fantastic year, I think the Leafs defense could prop up Samsonov to the point that both goalies, that neither of them have a good playoff resume, I think both goalies could be considered at a similar position right now. I don't think you could put Allmark in Vasilevsky category until he proves he can do it in the playoffs. So
Yeah.
goaltending for both sides has been good this regular season. It's nothing is solidified, nothing's guaranteed because no one has done it in the playoffs. Defense, both Boston and Toronto are really good defensively. Offensively, both Toronto and Boston really good, very deep defensively. But which team's older, which team's slower, which team's younger, which team's quicker? The Leafs are younger and quicker. The Bruins are older and slower. In a 7-game series, the Toronto Maple Leafs take down the Boston.
And I got the same series as Jared. And if I had Tampa Boston, I would have to disagree with Max. I would take the Lightning because with the Lightning success, after what they've been shaky in round one, uh, when they played against Florida, they were kind of shaky at the start. When they played against us last year, they were
Well, they
shaky.
swept Florida, so
But
No,
they
he's talking about the year before us, like in the first round when they played them in 2021.
Yeah, exactly. Like I said, but like yeah, they really turned it up in round two. But anyways, that's not my point. So anyway, this with the Leafs and the Bruins, I think the Leafs have a lot of they'll have a lot of momentum if they're heading onto round two. And I think what we've talked about a lot last over these last few years is that once they get past round one, the rest of the NHL is screwed. And I think this year is just the worst possible scenario because you get past round one, you have so much momentum, but now you're playing against the greatest team of all time, arguably. The Bruin, it's going to be a really tough challenge. And after we play, the biggest challenge in these last 20 years, arguably, I mean, Tampa, I mean, last year might have been, I don't know, we could rank that after, but it's a tough challenge. One of the toughest challenges the Leafs have had in the last few years, and then they're gonna have to play. They're gonna have an even tougher challenge if they get past round one. So I think even with all the momentum, I think the Bruins just are too strong of a team, and the Leafs have that speed. They have gone past Tampa. I mean, sorry, Boston. This year a few times. And they gave the Bruins a run for their money a couple weeks ago. At the beginning of the year, they beat them. And then there were two other times. I'm trying to think of. Do you guys
The
remember?
Bruins took one, then there was the
Yeah,
overtime one. So technically, it
yeah.
was like one overtime win, one regulation win, one regulation win.
Yeah. So, um, yeah. So it's been close, and I think this series will go to 6 or 7. But unfortunately, I hate to say I have the Bruins, and I could see the Leafs winning this series, and I wish the Leafs are in this series. And what I wish even more is that the Panthers take down the Bruins and the Leafs win. But we'll have to see what happens. I don't want to talk about it too much, even though we can go like we've stated over and over we can talk days and days about this Leafs team. And I really like them. I think they're strong. I think you keep a lot of the same guys. And I think next year you're gonna have a much easier scenario. I can't really see Boston or really any team for that matter, having a similar year than the Bruins. I think next year is our year. But for now, take over Tampa Bay. And I'm not saying this isn't our year whatsoever. With the momentum, we could definitely take down Boston. And I think it only gets to be honest, it only gets easier from the Bruins if we get past the Bruins. So I think it's definitely possible we win the series, and Jerry has them playing whoever next round, and the Leafs with going into round three with that much momentum, City of Toronto, Leafs on their heels. I could see them winning the cup after they get round two, but that's I think right after you have the biggest challenge, you can even have a bigger challenge, and that's just really tough for the Leafs. But it could go either way.
All right. So moving on to the last series we're gonna go over for round two. Me and Jared have Carolina versus the Rangers, and I have Carolina beating the Rangers. I think it's gonna be different than last year. I think Carolina's gonna go over that hump. They're gonna make it to the conference finals. Um, I don't think they've really done that like at all. They've made a second round a bunch of times, but they just haven't gone past that hump of making it past the second round. I wish that was noticed a bit more, so the Leafs wouldn't be clowned on as much. But yeah, the Carolina
Ever
they
since 2019,
it was 2019,
number
but
Yeah,
still
they
2018.
they
made it past the second round in 2019. Yeah, so it's not exactly.
yeah, but like obviously not the same at all, but still kind of a little bit of time. If you think about 2019 was 4 years ago, so that's three
Okay, like
playoff
if
series, four
people were
playoff
saying, "Oh,
series.
if the Leafs haven't made it out of the first round since 2019," I think we'd be sleeping a little bit better at night.
That's true.
Yeah,
I don't think it's hard. It's a little hard to compare 4 years ago to almost 20.
Alright.
Like I was 1 years old the last time the Leafs got out of the first round.
That's pretty brutal.
we weren't
But
even born, bro. We weren't even born.
all right.
Yeah.
So yeah, Hurricanes versus Rangers. I have Hurricanes. Much the same stuff. There's not much else to say. Obviously Rangers have better goalies, but Freddie Anderson, um, he hasn't really had that much playoff experience. He was injured. He was injured in the playoffs last year, right? I think it was Ronto
Yeah.
who's the starter,
Last year.
and he hasn't gone past the first round since because he was with the Leafs the year before and all the way back from 2016-17 season, I think. So yeah, Frederick Anderson obviously hasn't had much of experience, but he's definitely the type of goalie that can win one more than one playoff series, which I have said in my playoff bracket. Yeah, I just feel like Carolina is a bit obviously New York got all those pieces at the good amazing pieces at the deadline, but I feel like Carolina, even without Svechnikov, can definitely beat the Rangers in the 7 game series. And yeah, that's why I have them going to the conference finals to beat to not beat, but to
Jer-
face Boston.
Yeah.
no, sorry. Go ahead. I'll just.
So I have a battle of New York in this second round. I have the New York Islanders versus the New York Rangers.
Oh
And as much as the
yeah,
Islanders
yeah.
are a good team, they're gritty, they're tough to play against. In general, I just don't see a way they take down this New York Rangers team. New York is significantly better offensively. They have so much more scoring threats at both 5-on-5 and even shorthanded. But as well, they just have the worst stricken factor. And I know it's not as much of an advantage in this series because on the other end of the ice is Ilya Sorokin with the Islanders. So both teams are good offensively. Both teams are good in net, rather. But with the Rangers being so much better offensively, I just don't see a way these Islanders take them down. And for that reason, I'm going with the Rangers winning in 6, taking on the Toronto Maple Leafs in the conference finals.
All right, and my series, different from both of you. I got Carolina and New Jersey. Kind of funny. We each have different um, series for the Metro. But I got the Devils taking down the Hurricanes, and I think for the same reason the Islanders kind of make it. I have them Islanders taking it to 7. You have the Islanders winning. Jared Max. You have the Islanders, I believe, taking it to 6 games, or 7 games. I'm not sure, but either way, I think we all know that this Carolina team is not. I think the Hurricanes were better last year. I think.
Well, they were
I would
healthier,
if I would
Shelby.
if I were to put money on a team, if I were to put money on the Hurricanes winning, if I didn't know the playoffs last year, I would rather put money on the Hurricanes winning the cup last year than this year because I just don't think the Hurricanes are good, and I think we saw them lose to a New York team that's much speedier and youthful, with strong goaltending this year. I think it's gonna be the series. It'll be closer with the goaltending. I feel like, with Anderson not having the greatest year and Vanacek having a really strong year, so I think it evens out goaltending wise. But I think altogether, I think the Devils really good defensively. And I think with the pieces the New Jersey brought on, I think they can get around that stacked Carolina defense core, and take advantage of their injuries on offense and take down the Hurricanes, even though the Hurricanes slipped past New Jersey to make it to get the first seed. I think if the Hurricanes didn't get past the first, didn't win that final game, and then I think, and the Devils too, which they did, and they played New York in round 1, I would have the Rangers beating them in round 1. Yeah, I think this Hurricanes team is not that strong, and for the same reasons Jared stated, having the Islanders beat them, I'm gonna have New Jersey taking that spot. I think the Devils will take down Carolina in 6 games.
Right.
Max, take it away. Are we going over? Should we finish up the East, or do you want to go over to the West?
Well, we already.
To the East.
Yeah, let's do these
The
conference
conference
finals.
finals now.
Yeah. All right. So we all have different conference finals, I believe. All right. So or at least for the East. Um. So for my East Conference Finals, I have Boston versus Carolina. The rematch of the first round last year. I feel it's gonna be a pretty good matchup. Carolina gets back to their conference finals. Haven't done it since 2019, and which is unfortunate because they have to face Boston, like you said, like Don said earlier, arguably the best team of all time. It's a little bit unfortunate for everyone that's here in the playoffs. This is like so many teams. This could be like their breakout year, but the Boston's can like mow through them. And yeah, that's why I have Boston making to the Stanley Cup Finals for the first time since 2019. So, if I'm not mistaken, that would be a rematch, right?
Of the conference finals, yeah, it
Yeah.
Yeah,
was Carolina v.
the rematch of the conference finals in 2019, and have the same thing happening with Boston winning and heading to the Stanley Cup Finals to play whoever I have making the Stanley Cup Finals in the West.
Before I get to mine, I just want to say a little bit of a hot take that I'm not hearing enough people out there on hockey social media kind of echoing this opinion. And listen, maybe I'm in the minority of it, but do we at all think Boston is getting like the regular season speaks for itself? I'm not saying the regular season was overrated. The regular season was fantastic. But you can't right away look at a fantastic regular season and say, oh, they're definitely going to carry that over in the playoffs. Like, that isn't how the Stanley Cup playoffs work. And I kind of think people are looking at the fact that they were unstoppable in the regular season and are like guaranteeing that they're going to be that good in the playoffs. And I just don't think year after year that's how the playoffs work. I mean, if it did work like that, we would see a lot more regular season President's Trophy winning teams carry their play over and dominate the playoffs. But that just isn't how things work. And their numbers are so ridiculously out of this world, especially compare it to the expectations everyone had for the Bruins going into the year. Everyone predicted the Bruins would be, if they made the playoffs, they'd be like a wild card team. They've played their way out of those expectations and have played their way into everyone expecting them to be this dominant, absolute force. But in the playoffs, everything goes back to zero. What if they don't claw their way back up to that level of play? Because it's not a guarantee. Like, they've never been as good as they are right now. I mean, they were a first-round exit last year. Who's to say they're guaranteed going to be this dominant again? That's just kind of something that always pops into my mind. Because it's very common right now when people are making their predictions that everyone's saying the Bruins winning. And I'm not going to say it's wrong. I'm not going to say they can't win. I don't, am I the only one that thinks this? I don't think you could guarantee they're going to be that dominant in the playoffs.
I agree, but I think the only team that serves as a challenge would be the Leafs, and I think that I don't know just about you, and I'm gonna just go with my prediction right now, make it quick. I have Boston taking out New Jersey in 5 games. I think they'll easily. I think the Rangers, the Devils. I think the Rangers are the only team that would put up a challenge, but the Rangers, Devils, Hurricanes, Islanders. I don't think they could put up a challenge. Neither with the Panthers, and I think just the way I think you got the Leafs. I think, in my opinion, are the only team that could stop them, especially with momentum. And Tampa Bay as well. Obviously, I think the Lightning could win that series, but I think the Lightning or the Leafs are the only teams, and I think that's why that series would be so close. And that's why I also said when I was talking about Max with the Lightning, I was talking about my series with me and your series with the Leafs and the Bruins, that it could go to 7 games because that's so close. But I think round 1 and round 3 are going to be easier, and like you said, it's not confirmed that they're going to just win the cup. But I think the way you have to look at it, especially with the cap situation they are in, it's honestly cup or bust this year.
It's the last dance, it's Chicago.
Exactly. It's the last dance. They had the regular season success, and I'm thinking I actually researched this, and the last time a team, the Canadians, the 97 or the 78 or 77 Canadians, they won the cup that year when they got 131 points in 80 games. Better.
I think it's 132 points.
Yeah, sorry.
Doesn't matter.
I mean, I will say to that, I don't know about the points record. So obviously Montreal did win, but I know the last two teams that have competed with Boston in terms of wins in a season, it's Detroit in some year in the 90s, and then the Tampa Bay Lightning in 2019. Detroit got out in the conference finals that year. Tampa Bay got swept in the first round. So yeah. I just want to sprinkle it out there a little bit. I don't think you could just guarantee that a great regular season will carry over into a great playoffs. What you can say is the actual objective facts that the Bruins are really deep offensively, defensively, and have had a goalie that's playing like a Vezina candidate and probably will win the Vezina. So I think that you can't take away from them. But I don't know. And even when I post my social media predictions, whatever, for the playoffs, I'm kind of getting ripped on a little bit. A lot of people are like, no way you have a team beating the Bruins. I think people got to think back and to remember how much the expectations were for the Bruins at the start of the year. They were non-existent. People had them missing the playoffs. So I think to then all together flip that over and say they're a lock. I'm just saying there's a lot of examples of teams in NHL history that everyone has put that level of praise to them, and then they've kind of disappointed. But
they sorry, to counter your opinion, they have the team. They have the best roster in the NHL. So yeah, I mean, who knows? They could just, just lose a series. That'd be funny. I mean, the greatest team in NHL history could lose a series, and that Toronto Maple Leaf team is very, very stacked. And I could definitely see the Leafs pulling it off or the Lightning, but I don't know. I think just the way, with the amount of intensity they have and the roster and the goaltending. I mean, obviously, it's a mystery with Olmark. He had one of the greatest goaltending, regular seasons. But I think it is like you said, it is possible that they have high opinions. You have them getting out of the first round, and I think that second round is going to be their biggest challenge. In while they're still in the Eastern Conference, as I stated, I have them going to the Cup Finals, but um, I'm not saying it's going to be easy. And I think if I'm not, I'm saying it right now. I mean, if they play the Lightning and the Leafs, I would not be shocked if they get out in the second round. First round, I would be shocked. Third
Oh
round,
yeah,
I would
okay,
be shocked.
that's
Second
fair.
round, I wouldn't be shocked.
No, that's fair. I agree. And listen, if people's I mean, which with Max, for example, his justification for why they're gonna go to the Stanley Cup Finals, and I don't know his prediction, but my guess would be probably win the cup. If it's just the fact that they're so deep offensively, defensively, and in net, those are very fair. It's the people that are like, they got this amount of wins, so they're guaranteed to win it. I'm like, that's not how the Stanley Cup playoffs work. But anyways, enough about that. Finally, I got to get into my prediction, and it's a battle between the New York Rangers and the Toronto Maple Leafs. The Leafs get through the Lightning. The Leafs get through the Bruins. How do they then turn around and lose to the New York Rangers? I have them beating the Rangers in 6. You could make the argument that the Rangers are deeper and more spread out in terms of the offensive scoring. I think the Leafs' top players are better than the Rangers' top players, but the Rangers maybe are deeper offensively, but defensively, it's no question it's the Leafs. And even though Igor Shesterkin is a significantly better goalie than Samsonov, with the fact that the Leafs are so much better defensively than the Rangers, I think Samsonov is going to be getting a lot more help than Shesterkin is. And for that reason, I think in 6 games, I just don't see a way that the Rangers could pressure the Leafs as much as the Lightning or Bruins will have. And for that reason, I have them winning those games, 4 games out of 6, and ultimately penciling their spot into a Stanley Cup final position for the first time since 1967.
God damn, Jared, I wish I had the
The
same
balls.
passion as you. I just have wrong passion right now.
Right.
We'll see. Maybe if they do. Sorry, before Max goes. Sorry, maybe obviously I think if they get past round 1, I'm gonna be cheering for them to win, and I'm gonna be thinking, okay, we just got past round 1. After seeing us beat Tampa, if it happens, I think there's nothing. I mean, there's a chance. I'm gonna be thinking, there's nothing we can't do. We just beat the Lightning. So yeah, I mean, I think that's just gonna go either way. Sorry for cutting you off, Max, but I'm gonna stick with Boston. But yeah.
I just want to point out, I just saw something on Twitter really quickly that apparently Ryan O'Reilly was asked like when Matthews and Martin were both side out the game. I think it was like game 80 or something. No, it was game 79. And Ryan O'Reilly was asked to wear an aide, like to be an assistant captain for a game, and he rejected it, and Kerfoot wore it instead, which Kerfoot's interesting, but I just wanted to point that out. All right, so moving on to the west of the conference finals.
I love this Leafs team so much.
I have the Avalanche versus the Winnipeg Jets. I don't think I can go as far. I don't think I can be as high, any more high on the Winnipeg Jets as I could have, as I was for the first 2 rounds, and that's why I have Colorado winning. Colorado's made to the finals last year. I feel like they can definitely do it again, especially facing against Winnipeg. Obviously, I mentioned this the past 2 rounds, and you guys have as well. Connor Hellebuck, yes, a really amazing factor. But I feel like if one team can get past Connor Hellebuck, it will be the Colorado Avalanche. They just have an outstanding team. McKinnon, Rantanen, Makar. Obviously, others. Georgiev has been not bad this year. And I just feel like Colorado can definitely overpower Winnipeg. I feel like Winnipeg can definitely take this to 7. Then yeah, I feel like Winnipeg can definitely take this to 7, but I feel like Colorado will definitely come on top and face the Boston Bruins, and that's my Stanley Cup Finals, Bruins versus Avs.
It's a good pick for sure. I mean,
it's probably the most casual.
It's casual, but like at least on paper, there's a justification there that those could potentially be two of the greatest teams in their conference. So it's definitely a fair pick. I mean, it's the second place team in the West in points wise behind Vegas compared to a battle of the first place team in the entire NHL and the entire East. So it's definitely a favorite centric one, but also there's a reason that they're favorites because they are fantastic teams. So it's definitely fair.
Yeah.
Moving on now, though, I have a battle between the Dallas Stars and Connor Hellebuyck and the Winnipeg Jets, a battle between the two best goaltenders in the entire Western Conference. And looking at a little comparison about everything these teams have, both teams are really deep offensively. I'm actually going to give the nod offensively in terms of their, I'd say, top 9 core to the Dallas Stars, even though I do actually really like what the Winnipeg Jets have in store in their top 6. But defensively, behind Miro Heiskanen, the best defenseman in this series, I think the Jets have a deeper defensive core. And the Jets have a better goaltender in Connor Hellebuyck. Jake Ottinger's great, but he doesn't have the resume. He doesn't have the playoff experience that Connor Hellebuyck has. And for that reason, I'm setting up an all-Canadian Stanley Cup Finals. I have the Winnipeg Jets winning in 7 to punch their ticket to face the Toronto Maple Leafs in the Cup Finals.
I like that, but I'm gonna have to agree with Max. I think this is where the Jets' luck runs out against this Colorado team that has been in that situation, in this situation. And yeah, I mean this Avalanche team is hurt, but they got a lot of heart. And I think they need. There's definitely some holes in the bottom 6, but I think if the Avalanche can get their guys to step up, like we didn't expect, like for example last year, Lehkonen played really well, and he's been really good this year, and that's why the Avalanche have had such a good regular season, even though they've had these injuries, is because they've had guys who stepped up when they really needed them to, and I think they can. We've seen these guys, step it up in the playoffs. Think about Darren Helm, scoring a goal in the dying seconds of that series against St. Louis to send them to the third round. Like I think just the Avalanche have that way about them, and I think that now that they've finally gone past round 2, they've breaking that they've gone over the hump that the Leafs had. That the Leafs have similar with round 1 now with Colorado with round 2. I think they can just keep it going. I think they're going to play Boston in the Cup Finals, just like Max. I say that series goes to 6 or 7, just because playing in Winnipeg is going to be so difficult.
Yeah.
Definitely fair. Okay, let's get it going with the Stanley Cup Finals, which is pretty wild. But we got a matchup between you two, both of Colorado, Boston. I got the Jets and the Maple Leafs. This is fun.
Right. I think me and Dylan should go first, just because your series is a little bit different than ours. Because
I'm good with that.
More right. Also, there's 10 minutes left in the Zoom, but we should be good.
Yeah, no worries. No, it shouldn't be an issue.
All right. Yeah. So moving on, we have the Boston Bruins versus the Colorado Avalanche. Avalanche have been here before, and Boston has been here before in the past 4 years. Colorado won, and Boston did not win. But I have Boston winning the Stanley Cup Finals. I feel like, yeah, like Jared said earlier, people picked this just because they got the point record, but I'm not saying it's just because of the point record. I'm saying just how good of a team they have, how good of a how good depth they have. Like they just have such a good, well-rounded team that I feel like it's gonna be so hard for any team to get past them. Even Colorado, which obviously are in the finals I have them in the finals with Boston. Yeah, I have Boston winning the cup. And I just feel like I feel like a lot of people are gonna have this pick, which yeah, it's probably gonna happen. A lot of people probably will have this pick, but I feel like the reasons Boston, I feel like the reasons I gave out for Boston is better than just saying just because they are a good team and they beat the point record and they got the most wins in an NHL season in history. But yeah, I feel like they can just overpower them. But yes, Colorado is very good, top heavy, but depth wise, they're just not that good compared to Boston. Boston, I feel like is just gonna dominate in that. I feel like this can definitely go to 7, but I feel like Boston in 6 or 7 is probably most realistic.
Hey,
No,
sorry, I got
it's a
off.
fair pick.
Yeah.
I agree with that for sure. And
No.
exactly,
Yeah.
I wasn't saying that at you guys because you guys have some good justification there. And listen, there's no question that the Boston Bruins are one of the deepest teams in the entire league. I do think people are kind of getting it in their head that they're gonna win every game just like they won every game in the regular season. But looking at the actual players they have on this roster on paper, it's very hard to foresee any team taking them down.
And then adding on to that, like also like these guys have been there, like they've gone to the Cup Finals twice with the same core. Like
And
they,
Bergeron has won a cup.
it's different for them to just go to have the greatest. Like it's uncommon. Like the Bruins, this Bruins core hasn't been that good in the regular season, but they have been there in the playoffs, and I think that's why a lot of everybody expects Boston is because not only adding on to that regular season success, they've been really really good in the playoffs these last few years, like this last decade, and I think they'll be able to carry that on. And ignore what I said, they've been to 3 cups in the last decade, one for two. And I'm gonna make that one for three. I hate the Bruins. I hate talking about them. Can we just stop talking about them? I hope they go out in round two or round one. I hope they go out in round one. Maybe it'd be even sweeter if the Leafs would beat them. Um, but I think the time they go out, the time somebody finally beats this goddamn team is when the Avalanche. I don't know. I think they go back to back this year, even with a depleted roster. They got that storyline. If you really think about it, they have that. They have that. Compassion with Landeskog out. Like, okay, we got to do this for him. And I think the Avs are really. They're still a really strong team, and they'll still find ways to step up. And they've done so this entire regular season. Um, the goaltending is there, and if they're going to be in the conference finals at this point, or at the cup finals at this point, I mean, the goaltending has. If you're in the cup finals, you're going to automatically assume the goaltending has been great, and I think they'll carry that on. And I'm assuming Allmark's going to be fantastic in the regulars in the playoffs. Um, but I think the Avalanche have the guys to get past Omar and that defense. And sorry, I'm just sick of talking about the Bruins and how good they are. It's just give me Avalanche in 6. Thank you.
Got it. Okay. I mean, the only thing I'll say about that is last year, Darcy Kemper had like statistically one of the worst seasons by a cup winner, even though obviously he proved that you can get away with it. You can win a Stanley Cup, even with some subpar performances from your goaltenders because
And their defense is really good. Yeah.
Pardon?
Their defense is really good as well. So yeah.
And their defense is really good, exactly. But I find it hard to imagine 2 years in a row. I'm not going to say Georgiev is a subpar goaltender. He's obviously going to be a nominee for the Vezina. He had a really good regular season behind this great Avs team, but he definitely isn't a better goalie than a lot of the other teams that the Avs are going to have to go through in order to win another Stanley Cup. And for that reason, I find it hard to predict that they're going to win the Stanley Cup once again, 2 years in a row with having the worst goaltender in a series. But they're fantastic up front. They're fantastic defensively. So I definitely am not going to say it's wrong because you never know in the playoffs. If there's any team skilled enough that they could make ways to another cup, even with bad goaltending, it would be the Colorado Avalanche. So it's a fair pick, but obviously still skeptical about their goaltending because it's just Georgiev and Francouz aren't exactly the sexiest names.
And Binnington led the Avalanche to the cup, and he wasn't obviously he played really well in the playoffs, but he wasn't the greatest goaltender in the league. There's been goaltenders that in front of a solid defense, a solid team, have gone there, and I don't know. I think the Avalanche throughout this year, I think I've had a good feeling about them. And yeah, I think honestly the Leafs could play the Avalanche in the finals. I think the Leafs could win that series, but who knows? Let's get to your series.
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, speaking of a team that maybe great defense props them up to win a Stanley Cup, even if they aren't the better goaltender in a series. In my Stanley Cup Finals between the Toronto Maple Leafs and Connor Hellebuyck and the Winnipeg Jets, the Leafs are outmatched in net. No question about it. Connor Hellebuyck is the best goalie in that series. But the Leafs are better defensively than the Jets. The Leafs are better offensively than the Jets. And with significantly better defense, that the Leafs have compared to the Winnipeg Jets, they will be able to
We just
prop
said
up Ilya Samsonov, who to make it to the finals will already have to be playing fantastic, like you mentioned. But there's great defensive in front of him. And for that reason, how do you go through the Lightning? How do you go through the Bruins? How do you go through the Rangers and lose to the second wild card Winnipeg Jets? If the Toronto Maple Leafs get through the Bruins and the Lightning, I'm going to say they're winning the Stanley Cup. Leafs are winning the Cup in 6 games. They're taking
No
down
doubt
the
about
Winnipeg
it.
Jets.
No doubt about it. I am ready to get hurt again.
Exactly.
I've never done this before. I've had the Leafs going far.
Nah,
I've had
I
them go to
remember
conference
21.
finals.
I think 2021 you had the Leafs.
I've had them in the conference finals. I may have had them in the Stanley Cup finals.
I had them winning
I've
the cup
never
that
picked
year.
them as my. I've never picked them as my champion. Never.
All right.
And, I could go back the years. I've never picked them as my champion, and this year feels different.
It really does, eh?
This year's different.
All right.
It is. It just we're talking all about this. They're gonna get bounced in round 1. Imagine.
Yeah, I'm
Well,
prepared. I'm prepared to
Speak that
lose.
into the universe.
No,
I just put that. I
it's
just
gonna
put
be
that
a
out there
series.
because I'm prepared for them to lose. I don't
It's
know.
gonna be a great series.
I tried
Tampa-
convincing myself,
Tampa
but
give us
I
a
just can't.
challenge.
I can't come around to it. But clearly, both of you guys have come around to it.
You
But
gotta have the passion.
I picked the Lightning last year. Last year, I genuinely I don't even think it's a biased pick. I picked the Lightning last year to beat the Leafs because I genuinely thought the Lightning were a better team than the Leafs. I think the Leafs are a lot better of a team than the Lightning this year. And if they weren't called the Tampa Bay Lightning and the Toronto Maple Leafs and they didn't have the same resumes that we remember,
Yeah.
I think the Leafs are a lot better of a team. But, with that being said, that is kind of all the time we have. But don't count out the Toronto Maple Leafs. That's the ending message we're going to end on.
right, yeah, that was a good way. That was a good way to end the pod. Hope you guys enjoyed. We had some fun making this. Definitely some pretty big predictions from all three of us, and I hope you guys enjoyed. We'll see you in the next one. Peace.
Yeah, thanks for